appreciate all y'all showing up. We will have opening prayer and then the president's flag. Dear Lord, thank you for the blessings of this day. Give us the strength and courage and wisdom to make the right decision to save the Lord. Amen. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This meeting is called for a public hearing, and you know that Joey conducted it. First of all, I need everybody to remember that this is a legal meeting, and they'll treat it accordingly, act accordingly. And this your attorney's cell phones also don't hear you ringing during this meeting. All right, Joey.
Thank you, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, I call now for a removal hearing regarding the removal of Councilmember Gene Bramlett pursuant to Section 2.17 and Section 3.12 of the Charter for the City of Lula. As preliminary information, this will be an administrative hearing. Mr. Ab Hayes was appointed by the council to pursue an investigation as directed by the council and to issue a report that having been accomplished on August the 21st. The notice has been timely provided, notified that Mr. Lance Crawford will be here representing Mr. Bramlett. I will, in just a minute or two, ask if there are any preliminary matters that Mr. Hayes and Mr. Crawford believe the council needs to address before proceeding. Assuming that we proceed, Mr. Hayes will then present the information to the council that he's obtained during his investigation. Then the council will have the opportunity to make any statement or ask any questions they may have. Then Mr. Bramlett, Mr. Crawford, on behalf of Mr. Bramlett, would then be permitted to present any information he may have to council. Both sides are permitted to provide witnesses and any documentary evidence that they wish to call. My role in this is to solely serve as a hearing officer, to guide the proceedings and rule on any legal issues that may come before the council. At the conclusion of the information presented by the attorneys and Mr. Bramlett, council is then permitted to retire to executive session solely to deliberate. I expect that council and I will go to City Hall, so you will not have to stand out in the cold for that limited purpose. And then we'll come back here and any decision must be announced right here in an open public meeting. Any preliminary matters to be addressed, Mr. Hayes?
No, sir.
Mr. Crawford?
Yes. I have two preliminary matters. Okay, one of them might be preliminary, might not be, but.
Can you come to the podium for me so we can get and the microphone hopefully will be on?
Absolutely.
It's not.
Is it on or not on?
We'll get it turned on. Thank you.
On now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, the preliminary matter that I have is to request a continuance of this hearing based upon the absence of investigator Rundles, who is probably the key witness in this case. Basically, it's my understanding that he interviewed all witnesses to this case, okay, including council members. And unfortunately, it has come to my attention that he cannot be here tonight because he's having some type of surgery that will keep him in the hospital for at least a few days, maybe longer than that. I'm not sure of the nature of that, but I believe he is a key witness. I don't know of any written report that he issued, and therefore I would certainly like the opportunity to question him about what findings he had and what conclusions, especially, that he reached. So I would request that this hearing be continued until investigator Rundles is available.
Can you go ahead, Mr. Hayes?
Yes, I would say that the issue of a continuance is up to the mayor and council. I would object to a continuance in that I've provided Mr. Rundle's reports. Their full recitations of his interviews can be reviewed by y'all as the deciding body, as well as by Mr. Crawford. I believe section 3.12 of the charter gives any council member the ability to subpoena witnesses. If Mr. Crawford had put Mr. Rundle's under subpoena and then he didn't show, I think that'd be a different matter. However, he did not. I learned of Mr. Rundle's being in the hospital just last week. Otherwise, I would have had him here, but I don't believe that it's a basis for continuance. In terms of interviewing or asking questions of Mr. Rundle's about his findings and conclusions, I would just state that his witness interviews speak for themselves. He is not the person who gets a vote, who gets to come up with findings and draw conclusions. That is up to y'all. If 3 of y'all vote to remove Mr. Bramlett, then he will be removed, subject to appeal, and that's not really in Mr. Rundle's charge. So I don't believe a continuance is warranted, but again, I would defer to however y'all want to proceed.
Any comments from council?
I would like to say that we had the opportunity to.
Let's use the mic. I'm
sorry. That we had the opportunity to defer the hearing, and I myself, and I believe I can speak for Garnet and Tony, that we had the investigation report in front of us and didn't feel that he could offer any more information other than what was already in the report, and so we chose to go on with the hearing today.
I agree.
I agree. And that request is denied, Mr. Crawford.
Very well. The other matter that may not be a preliminary hearing is an objection that I have to this hearing, as it, in my opinion, certainly violates my client's, Mr. Bramlett's, rights to due process of law, And I don't know if you're qualified to rule on that or not, but if you are, I'm going to go ahead and make the argument anyway, and there also will be witness testimony that will be needed in support of this argument. Do you believe that you're qualified to render?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. As an elected city official, Gene Bramlett has a property interest in his office that entitles him to due process of law, before his office can be taken from him or before he can be removed. Due process requires a definite charge, adequate notice, and a full and fair and impartial hearing. The opportunity to be heard must be afforded at a meaningful time and in a meaningful manner to comport with due process. Whenever due process requires that, the adjudicator must be impartial. An adjudicator or a fact finder is not impartial if the fact finder has prejudged the case before this hearing, if the fact finder harbors actual bias toward a participant, in this matter, Mr. Bramlett, or if a high probability exists that the fact finder harbors such feelings, basically prejudice or bias. Basically, any order or finding, that's rendered in this case, if it is found that Mr. Bramlett has been denied due process, is void as a matter of law. And I've got a lot of witnesses about bias, if you want me to present them.
It's your motion, sir.
All right. I'd first call Gene Bramlett, And where will he be? Will he be sitting right here?
He's fine sitting right there. Any other witness can sit over here. You don't swear you witness?
Yeah. Mr. Bramlett, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, Mr. Bramlett, Do you feel that this panel, the city council, is impartial?
No, they're not.
Why not?
they've already got their minds made up on what they're gonna of this proceeding. And one of the council members, that's what he's ran over to get removed, get me and Joe removed from office.
All right, which council member would that be?
That would be Mr. Cornett.
Okay. How do you know that?
He put it out in his campaign.
Okay, all right. And is there any evidence of bias by any other council members?
Well, I think there is by Mr. Denise Shockley.
All right, and what causes you to say that?
Well, she, in a committee meeting, she came to, she was in the HR committee with myself, and Joe was in there, and she asked Joe to remove me from the human resources because of an employee.
Let's pause while the train is going by, please. Yeah, that's probably true. Can you get that mic over to Gene?
All right, continue.
And the committee meeting, she asked for me to be removed from the Human Resources Committee because I did not report employee made a complaint myself to the mayor and to another person in the community that came forward.
And what was the nature of that complaint?
It was against, made against the city manager.
And what was the nature of it?
I don't understand what you said.
Okay. Basically, what was the complaint about? Okay. Was it about sexual harassment or something else or what?
Well, I don't know really what you want to call it. He said that he didn't like the way that the city manager was talking, using the bugger language and talking jokes.
You don't have to go into specifics, but basically, what happened as a result of that?
Well, the city manager came before the council and executive session and
Well, no, I'm not worried about that, okay? What happened between you and Ms. Shockley, if anything?
but the statutory she requested me to be removed from the city council from the Human Resources Committee.
Okay. And did she appear upset?
No, not at that time.
Okay.
Now,
All right. Okay. All right. And when did that occur? Was it earlier this year?
yes,
So long before July of this year, correct?
yes.
All right. Now, are there any other instances of potential bias involving Ms. Shockley?
Yes, Ms. Shockley brought a proposal to the council to have a wedding venue or something built on our property. And
When was that?
Mr. Crawford, if you've got, I understand your comments and your motion, but the matters that predate, if you can explain how the matters that would predate the
Sure.
allegations here, then we'll go forward. Otherwise, any disagreements between council members, which should be expected, I don't believe would support this motion.
I think that it would, because basically it shows pre-existing bias on their part against another city council. And an adjudicator or a fact finder here should be totally impartial, okay? They should not have any ill feelings, okay, towards a participant in the hearing, and especially an accused, as Mr. Bramlett is.
But the state of the law is under the, and this is a Georgia Supreme Court decision, Georgia Board of Dentistry v. Pence, a 1996 decision, says combining the functions of investigation and adjudication in an administrative agency, which this body would be for purposes of this hearing,
Sure.
does not violate the requirements of due process, and the fact that the administrative agency is both the accuser and the judge does not deprive the accused of due process of law.
I
So
agree.
the fact that they're serving that dual role, I don't know would
That's
support
not-
your motion.
That's not my argument. My argument is that certain city council members had pre-existing bias against Mr. Bramlett that continues, okay? It's got nothing to do with a combination of functions.
Could I argue, like, related to the motion, before he
Sure.
continues the witness testimony? Here are the things that he talked about. He talks about the requirement of a definite charge. We have a very clear charging document that cites to the sections of the charter and talks about why Mr. Bramlett is seeking to be removed. We have adequate notice, and we followed the notice set forth in the charter. And of course, the charter governs the city of Lula, and Mr. Bramlett ran to be on the council of the city of Lula with full understanding of the charter. It calls for a full, fair, and impartial hearing. He talked about that. The charter sets forth how the hearing is to take place. He talked about being denied an opportunity to have a meaningful hearing, meaningful time, meaningful manner. Again, the charter sets forth how this hearing is to take place, and here we are. And then in terms of impartial, prejudgment, nothing that Mr. Bramlett has stated thus far. I mean, I guess he could produce other testimony, would indicate anything about prejudgment, would indicate anything that would rule out y'all acting as voting members of the city council. In fact, this is what is given to you, this authority under the charter. So I would argue that if he's making this attack, what it really is an attack on the process laid out in the charter as being somehow inherently unconstitutional. I think that would be more appropriate for an appeal to Superior Court if it gets to that point.
Yes, sir.
I agree, but what I'm trying to do is to show bias, okay? And like I said, this might not be the proper venue, okay, to argue due process, okay? But my point is that certain members of the city council did prejudge this, okay? Basically, in a meeting, okay, on July the 17th, okay, basically Garnet Smith, okay, did tell the mayor that it was either Mr. Bramlett, it had to be either you or Mr. Bramlett, okay, that leaked information to Felton Wood. And there's no evidence, quite frankly, that Mr. Bramlett ever leaked any information to anybody, but that's not my argument right now. But that shows bias, and there's also other evidence of bias against Garnet Smith as well as those statements, okay? But there's more than just this. Also, as far as prejudging is concerned, I'm looking for what Ms. Shockley told the investigator, okay? Basically, she said that an article came out in the Times with quotes from Wood and Bramlett. She stated that led them to think most likely Bramlett had provided the information to Wood. Now, that's prejudging, okay? That was long before any evidence was compiled in this case. If that's not prejudging, I don't know what that is.
And then, okay, if you can identify a statement that any member of council
Sure.
said that
It was,
that Gene should be removed, then please identify that for us. Otherwise, I'd like to move on with the hearing.
it was on September the 28th of 2023 to investigator Rundles, okay?
Yes, sir. And what was the quote?
Basically, she stated later an article came out in the Times with quotes from Wood and Bramlett. That was the August the 4th article. She stated that led them, meaning the city council, to think most likely Bramlett had provided the information to Wood, which is what we're here tonight about.
And go ahead.
That's prejudging, okay? The statement that Garnet Smith made to the mayor, okay? When he asked the mayor whether or not he had provided or leaked the information to Felton Wood, okay? That's evidence, okay, of bias and prejudgment. And there's other evidence about Garnet Smith as well. All right, about bias. Do you want me to continue or do you want him to address that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll produce evidence from the Times itself that subsequent to my report that validates that suspicion, that in fact states flatly that Mr. Bramlett did leak the information in executive session to the Times. And I would suggest that the motion again is just out of place, could be brought on appeal if it gets to that point. Also, Mr. Holmes, I would suggest that you could perhaps reserve ruling on it until you see all the evidence that comes in, and then rule on it prior to it going to them for a decision.
That's what we'll do, because y'all are both getting into what's in the actual report and what was essentially the investigation, so we'll just reserve ruling until the time that it's submitted to council. Any other preliminary matters?
No, sir.
Mr. Hayes?
Thank you. I know y'all have already gotten this information, but I'm going to give to everyone a copy of the report just so you have it handy in case you didn't bring it with you. Then I'm also going to give you a copy of an article from the Times that came out after my report that I marked as Exhibit L. So as Mr. Holman stated, I was hired to do an investigation. I hired Mr. Rundles. Of course, y'all are paying him through the city of Lula, but I retained Mr. Rundles to conduct interviews. You see in the report, which has previously been provided to you, that I attached everything that he looked at. The memo from Joey to y'all, August 10th, 2023. The article in the Times from August 4th and 5th that kind of kicked this thing off. His interviews of each of you seated up here, as well as Mr. Bergen, Ms. Puckett, Garner, and Felton Wood. Also some Felton Wood social media posts. I've also given to you an article from the Times, and I'll give y'all a couple of minutes to look at it if you'd like. But it is from November 17th to 18th. I would direct your attention to the third paragraph of that article. It starts with the city. Do y'all see what I'm talking about? It states, the city was forced to abort its search for an assistant city manager in August after Councilman Gene Bramlett leaked privileged information from executive session and named Horace G., a director of public utilities in Banks County, as one of two candidates under consideration for the job. So then I turn to the charging document. You'll have this report with you when you go to do your deliberations. You'll see all the interviews that were done, and it's up to you to draw conclusions. I've charged in the charging document under two sections of the charter. The first one is section 2.17A1, incompetence, malfeasance, and misfeasance in office. And then the second one is 2.17A4, knowingly violating section 2.163 by disclosing confidential information concerning the government and affairs of the governmental body without proper legal authorization and using such information to advance the private interest of Mr. Bramlett. The charging document kind of speaks for itself. It's well known, anyone that's ever elected to local government office, it's talked about executive session, that things that are discussed in executive session are to stay in executive session. There's three topics you can generally discuss: litigation, personnel, and real estate. And here you're in there talking about personnel, and you need to protect the identities of the folks that put in for a job. Here that was not done. The information was leaked, putting the jobs that the applicants were in already in jeopardy, hampering your ability to negotiate with the folks about a job, and just totally derailing the process of hiring an assistant city manager. So I think it clearly meets the requirements, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about process. Okay. Mr. Homans had stated that some of y'all might wish to make a statement. If so, then I would need to swear you in. You can make whatever statement you wanted, but you'd also be subject to questioning by Mr. Bramlett or his lawyer. Does anyone wish to make a statement?
I do.
Okay. If you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right.
Do I need to
Bring
go?
her the mic. Yeah. No, you're fine right there. Let's just take her the one that Gene has.
I just want to say that when this investigation does come out to the public, that my name has been tarnished in it unfairly. I have been accused of cussing out Gene Bramlett, which did not happen. Those words did not come out of my mouth. I did have a conversation with him, but there was not a single cuss word leave my mouth in that conversation. It was also said that it was heard by Felton Wood. That is also not true. He was inside the building, but our conversation was outside the building and was not heard by anyone other than Gene and myself. It was a private conversation that we had between ourselves. It was an adult conversation to handle a matter in an adult, professional way, in which we left with Gene telling me that he appreciated me coming to him and talking to him personally about the issue. It did not end in a cussing out. It never happened that way. It was me voicing my opinion, him voicing his opinion, agreeing to disagree, and move on like adults should move on. It was a conversation in a way that should have been handled, and I felt on both sides. I felt like it was a productive conversation. It is not portrayed that way in this investigation at all. Trying to think what else was said in there. There's other things that were said, but that's the most important thing. I've never cussed anyone out. That's not language that comes out of my mouth. I haven't known a lot of y'all for a very long time, but I know that none of y'all have ever heard me talk like that. That kind of broke me because that's not the person that I am, nor have I ever been. And I just felt like I needed to defend myself on that aspect, and that y'all know it.
And I don't have any questions for Ms. Shockley, but Mr. Crawford may.
Yes.
So you mentioned Ms. Shockley, and I apologize if you thought that your name was tarnished, okay? But
Well, I didn't think it. I know it.
I understand. Now, but you and Mr. Bramlett did have a conversation, correct?
Did?
And that was much earlier this year,
It was.
before July, right? Maybe January or February or
I don't
March?
I don't know the exact date.
You don't remember? Okay. Do you know the month?
I do not. I don't even
All right.
remember. I mean, it was, I don't know. I can't honestly tell you exactly when it was. I can tell you where it was, but I can't tell you when it was.
Right. And it was at Waffle House,
It
wasn't
was at the Waffle House.
Right, okay.
I know it was on a Monday.
Okay. And did you go to confront Mr. Bramlett, or did he go somewhere to you?
No,
Did you-
I approached him. I
Okay.
approached him. I did.
All right.
I
And
did.
what caused you to approach him?
I had a question about a decision he made, and it was in regards to a personal issue that I had come before. I had wanted to put a venue on my property. It was stated in the ordinance that it was allowed on agricultural property as long as I abided by the guidelines. I didn't, well, actually the guidelines aren't even listed in the statement, so I was just appeasing what people thought the guidelines should be actually, because it's not actually worded in there.
Okay.
So I went back and I redone what I was wanting to do, adding to, which was more costly than what I was wanting to do, but I done it to meet the needs of what they thought I should be doing, and it was simply stated there in black and white that it was allowed. He voted no, and I went to ask him his reasoning behind the voting no, when it specifically said that it was allowed on the type of property that I owned, and I was just curious as to how he come to his conclusion.
Okay.
He responded that he could vote how he wanted to vote, try to defer from the conversation. Went on to something else that happened in the council meeting. I had to pull him back to the conversation that we were having. He then said that he voted how the people wanted him to vote, and that he could vote how he wanted to vote. Again, I said, you can vote how you want to vote, and I agree with that. However, when we have an ordinance and it says that something is allowed, you can't vote against an ordinance that is put in place. And I don't understand where you're coming from. I'm not the type of person that goes and talks about people behind their backs. I come to their face, and that's why I come and ask and have a conversation with you. And he said, I appreciate that very much. He went in to sit down and eat. I went in to sit down and eat, and we went about our business, and that's the extent of the conversation.
Okay. And so you never said anything about telling Mr. Bramlett that the way he voted was not legal, anything to that effect?
That's what I just said. I just said that you have to vote in a legal way when it's stated in the ordinance that something is allowed, then it doesn't matter if you like it or not, it's allowed to be done. I have to vote on things as a council member when I don't want to, simply because the law states that I have to vote that way. Right. That's part of being on the council. You have to do things that you don't like sometimes. Absolutely. And that's just part of the decision making we have to do. We don't always like what we want to do, and it don't always go with what people want, but that's our job.
Okay. And basically, there was another instance that came up, okay, regarding this employee complaint about Dennis Bergen, which I don't want to get into the specifics about. Okay.
I'll address that. Actually, what he stated was wrong there. That was a different incident.
Yes.
The incident that happened when I asked for that was after the sexual harassment claim. It didn't have to do with a claim, the claim that he was stating. That wasn't whenever I asked that. It was after the sexual harassment. He was on the Human Resource Committee along with myself. I probably have the paperwork where I can tell you when I asked that.
Okay.
And I requested that he be removed from Human Resources. Right. It was not accusing him of what he done, but I felt like, given the circumstances, it would be better if we had a different council member on the Human Resources. Okay. Because I felt like it would make the city workers more comfortable coming to the Human Resources Committee if they need be, if somebody that didn't have a complaint against them was on the Resource Committee. It had nothing to do with Bramlett personally. Okay. It had to do with making the city workers comfortable, and therefore I requested for him to be removed in light of the accusations and someone else be put in his place.
Okay. And basically, there was a petition for recall of Mr. Bramlett that came out on or about March the 15th of this year, right?
Yes, sir.
And you signed that petition?
I sure did.
Okay. All right. And do you want me to inquire of this witness about other things other than basically bias at this time?
If it's part of what her statement was, then you're certainly entitled to go into it.
It's not part of her statement, okay? Yeah, but so you want me to wait to...
You would need to recall her, yes.
That's fine. Nothing further?
All right, do any of the rest of y'all wish to make a statement? All right, then I would just reiterate that the charges before you are based on the leaking of information out of executive session relating to the hiring of an assistant city manager. In his motion opening, Mr. Crawford talked about a lack of evidence that Mr. Bramlett had leaked the information. However, again, I would direct you to this newspaper article in the Times, which is what prompted this thing to get started. And the reporter for the Times flatly says that y'all were forced to abort your search for an assistant city manager after Councilman Gene Bramlett leaked privileged information from executive session. So I don't know how much more direct it could get in terms of confirming the identity of the leaker. And so I believe that clearly falls within both provisions of the charter, and that if you so choose, you could decide to remove Mr. Bramlett under either or both of those charter provisions. And that's all I have.
Crawford?
Basically, it was always my understanding that the major issue here was about Gene Bramlett leaking information to Felton Wood, okay? According to Garnett Smith, okay, when he talked to the investigator, he said that basically Felton Wood came up to him the day after this happened, okay? Or actually it's the same day as the council meeting, which would have been July the 10th, if I'm not mistaken, okay? And there's testimony from Mr. Wood, okay, to Investigator Rundles that he got the information from Garnett Smith. It was Garnett Smith that leaked that information to him, and believe you me, it was detailed information. But basically, we concede, okay, that Mr. Bramlett did, okay, talk to a newspaper reporter and did mention Horace G's name. However, that was almost a month thereafter, after which it had become public knowledge about all this, okay, in the city of Lula. Everybody was already talking about it. Therefore, at that time, that ceased to be confidential information. As Mr. Smith pointed out, okay, when he said that he confirmed that he in fact did, okay, give information, okay, about to Mr. Wood, okay, about the candidates, okay, but he said that didn't matter then because it was already out. So it ceased to be confidential information. After it's already out and everybody already knows about it, and if you want me to, I'll recall Mr. Bramlett, okay, and we'll find out that basically the newspaper reporter already had this information. Mr. Bramlett didn't come up with a surprise to him. And also that article doesn't say that Mr. Bramlett, it says that that he did it, but it doesn't show what personal knowledge that newspaper reporter had that he did it, okay? But like I said, we concede that some 3.5 weeks afterwards, yeah, okay, after it had become public knowledge, he did mention the candidates. And I'm sure other council members had discussed it with other citizens of the city of Lula too, because it was no longer confidential information. But is the prosecutor finished it for the entire case? Okay, all right. Basically, then I'll go ahead and call Mr. Bramlett again, okay? And does he need the microphone?
Yes. It makes it more difficult to hear if you don't have it.
It's not on. You want me to turn it on?
Do I press this up?
Yeah, just flip it up.
Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Bramlett, okay. Were you in attendance on July the 10th at a meeting, okay, a city council meeting, an executive session?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and basically, what was discussed, and I don't believe it's confidential information anymore, so you can talk about it.
Well, we're talking about hiring an assistant city manager.
Okay?
And,
Go ahead.
we voted to hire one, and, that party turned it down.
Well, you don't have to go into the specifics about that.
Okay,
What did you do after the meeting was over with?
I went home and went to bed, went to sleep.
All right, do you remember what time the meeting was over with?
Eight,
Okay.
somewhere around eight o'clock.
Did you talk to Felton Wood at all that evening after the meeting?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Question was witness sworn? Witness was sworn, I believe, before.
He was.
Thank you.
All right. Now, have you ever leaked any information from executive session that wasn't public knowledge to Felton Wood?
No, I have not.
Okay. Have you ever leaked information to anyone else from an executive session?
No, I have not.
All right. And have you reviewed the provisions of the charter?
Yes,
You heard the prosecutor say that, Mr. Hayes say that it's well known that matters in executive session, okay, are to be kept confidential. Is that your understanding, that all matters in an executive session are to be kept confidential?
for the biggest part, yes.
Okay, all right. But some aren't, correct?
Correct.
All right. And basically, you've reviewed the charter, correct?
Yes.
Does the charter address executive sessions at all?
No, it does not.
Does it address confidential information?
No, it does not.
Okay. Does it make disclosing confidential information a wrongful or unlawful act?
No, it does not.
Okay. All right. And have you reviewed any applicable provisions of the code of the city of Lula? Applicable to this issue, are there any that address executive session? Say that again?
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right. Are there any that address confidential, keeping confidential things that are said at executive sessions?
No.
Okay. All right. And had you heard other people discussing the information about assistant city managers and the names of city managers before August the 4th? Or before you talked to the reporter, whenever that was, regarding,
Yes.
okay. And how many other people had you heard talking about and mentioning the names of the candidates?
I really don't know how many it was that were in the store. I was in the store and I heard several people talking about it. I don't remember who they were.
Okay,
Some of them I didn't even know who they were.
I understand.
But, after that point, it was not confidential anymore because it's already out.
When did you first learn, okay, or when did you first talk to Felton Wood about any of these matters that occurred during the executive session of July the 10th?
Actually, it come out in the paper.
Okay. And would that be August the 4th? Is that what we're talking about?
Whatever the day this paper came out, whatever the day I talked to the
Okay,
lawyer about it.
all right. Now, getting back to the issue of bias for a second, okay? All right. Have you ever had any problems with Garnett Smith?
No, I don't know.
Okay. Do you remember whether or not you've read a newspaper article where Garnett Smith mentioned getting rid of you as a city council member?
I've heard about it, but no, I haven't.
You never read it, okay? All right. What did you hear about that article?
That I had to go. They don't need to go.
Okay, and when did that article come out?
I do not know because I did not read it.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Now, did you ever require any other information about something that Garnett Smith said after he left on August the 14th, okay, executive session?
I was told out of the executive session that they came out to do the removal process. And he came out and he told Drake, I believe it was, that he told you, I told you I was gonna do it.
Okay, and what did that mean to you?
Made that meant that his mind was already made up that that's what he was gonna do.
Well, what was he gonna do?
That they were going for the removal
Of?
of myself from council.
Okay. All right. Anything else that you'd like to add about your relationship with Garnett Smith?
I always thought I had a good relationship with Garnett. I've been sick, his wife been sick, we talked about that. I had a limb that fell off a tree down there and he came down, moved the limb out of my yard for me, I wasn't able to do it. And he came down and removed the limb, and I appreciate that. That's the reason I couldn't understand why that we seem to be friends, but then I hear all this other, I've got to go and other statements have been made.
Okay. All right. No further questions at this time.
Hey,
Mr. Bramlett, you said there's nothing in the charter about confidential info. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Have you read the charges that are being brought against you tonight?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, I'm going to read it to you. The second charge against you is that pursuant to section 2.17A4 of the charter, that you knowingly violated 2.16 subsection 3 by disclosing confidential information concerning the government and affairs of the governmental body without proper legal authorization and using such information to advance the private interest of yourself. That's a quote from the charter that specifically talks about confidential information. Have you not seen that?
I understand that part, but it was not confidential information, it was already out, sir.
Okay. What led you to believe when you leaked this information to the Times reporter that the information was public knowledge?
Because I went into the store, and there were several people in the store already talking about it.
Who?
I couldn't, like I said, I don't know who the word is. I didn't stand there and listen to them. I went on out about my business, but I heard them talking about the candidates and what. I already knew everything.
What did they say?
And basically what they said was that it was offered, one of the candidates was offered a job, and it was turned down, and Mr. G had, the other candidate, didn't get the job.
But you don't know who they were?
I don't know.
All right, what else led you to believe it was public knowledge when you leaked it to the Times?
Well, after I heard him in the store talking about it, I did talk to Felton Wood. And Felton Wood told me he got this information from Garnett Smith. That's all I know. That is his, so.
What's that?
That hearsay, I don't know for a fact that was true.
Don't worry about what's hearsay for this hearing.
I'm sorry.
I said, don't worry about what's hearsay for
Yes.
this hearing.
Yes.
All right, that's all I have.
Now, Mr. Bramlett, it's also alleged here, okay, that pursuant to section 217A4, you knowingly violated section 2.16(3) by disclosing confidential information concerning the government and affairs of a governmental body without legal authorization and using such information to advance the private interest of himself. Do you know of any information how your private interest was advanced, okay, by this?
No, I did not. I had no private interest in that.
Okay.
I had
Did
no
you,
private interest in it at all.
did you receive any money from anybody?
No, I did not.
Did you ever receive any promises of financial gain or other type of gain from anyone
No, I have
as,
not.
as a result, okay, of what you told the newspaper reporter?
No, sir.
Nothing further.
You can call your next witness.
I'd like to recall Ms. Shockley just to ask her one question. And she's already, oh, sorry.
Tell Dennis she was already sworn.
Relax, me, don't worry.
Ms. Shockley, you were interviewed by Mr. Rundles, right?
I was.
Okay. And you told him that you didn't know who leaked the information, correct? To Felton Wood.
That's correct.
Okay. Nothing further?
Nothing.
Call your next witness.
I'd like to call the mayor, Joe Thomas, okay?
All right, Mike is right here. He will need to be sworn.
Yes.
It's okay. We'll go with
Mr. Thomas, would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you are about to give shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And you're the mayor of the city of Lula, right?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been the mayor of the city of Lula?
2 years.
Okay. And basically, do you remember the July the 17th executive session, okay? The one after the executive session?
Yeah, I wouldn't get it, I don't.
All right. Do you remember Garnet Smith ever asking you whether or not you leaked confidential
Yes, I remember that.
confidential information to Felton Wood?
I remember that.
Okay. And did you respond to that?
I did reply to that.
Okay. And what did you say to that?
No,
Okay. Do you have any information regarding who did leak that confidential information to, at the time, confidential information to Felton Wood?
I do not.
Okay. All right. And do you have any information that Gene Bramlett was involved at all in that leak of allegedly confidential information?
No, sir.
Okay. And back to July the 17th, okay? Basically, when Garnet Smith, okay, was interviewed by investigator Rundles, he told investigator Rundles that when he asked you that question, okay, all right, that basically you hung your head and didn't respond, or you dropped your head and didn't respond. Is that correct or incorrect?
I replied no.
Okay. Have you reviewed the provisions of the charter for the city of Lula?
I have.
Okay. Do they address executive sessions?
No, sir.
Okay. Do they address at all, okay, leaking, what information is considered confidential at these sessions?
It does not.
Okay. Have you reviewed the provisions of, any provisions of the City of Lula Code, okay, that address executive sessions?
No, sir.
Have you reviewed the provisions of the City of Lula Code that might address confidential information or leaking confidential information?
There's one section in it, sir.
Huh?
There's one section that does address confidential information.
What does it say? Does it talk about confidential information in executive sessions?
No, sir.
Some other context, what context does it talk about it?
I'll read it to you.
Okay.
No way to violate section 216 or any other express prohibition of this charter. That's what 2.1784 says.
Okay. And does that address executive sessions or
No, sir.
leaking confidential information?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Specifically, I guess I should say. All right. And do you remember Garnet Smith making a comment, okay, after you replied no, something to the effect, on July the 17th, something to the effect that it had to be either you or Gene Bramlett who leaked the information to Felton Wood. You remember that?
He did say that, yes, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of any evidence that Gene Bramlett, okay, received anything of value for talking to the newspaper reporter on or about August the 2nd through August the 4th?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of any other private gain or benefit he might have derived from doing that?
No, sir.
Okay. Nothing further.
Mr. Mayor, does Mr. Homans ever go into executive session with y'all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're aware that one thing you can talk about in executive session is litigation, correct?
Correct.
All right, when y'all go in, if y'all were to talk about litigation and Mr. Homans was to give you legal advice, would you think that you would then be free to go all over town and tell everybody what Mr. Homans had said?
No, sir.
Okay. And if you did that, that would be totally an incompetent way of handling your job as the mayor, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Likewise, if y'all went into executive session and talked about buying a piece of real estate and how much you might pay for it, you would not then leave executive session and tell the reporter everything that had been said, would you?
Yes, sir.
All right. And with personnel, if you go into executive session to talk about disciplining someone or hiring someone, how much you might pay, who the applicants are, you do not feel free to leave that executive session and tell everybody you encounter what y'all talked about, do you? Okay. Thank you.
I've just got one follow-up, okay? Basically, after you've left executive session and that information regarding value of real estate or any of these other matters, after you've heard it from other members of the public, okay, do you think that that's still considered confidential information when you overhear others?
I'm not at liberty to discuss that.
Huh?
I'm not at liberty to discuss that.
All right, nothing further.
You can call your next witness.
I'd like to call Tony Cornett.
Pass the mic down there.
Tony, swear you.
raise your right hand.
I can't raise my right arm all the way due to surgery I just had on November 16th for shoulder surgery, but I will raise this
No,
up
no, well, that's okay.
as much as I can.
I apologize, sir. I was totally unaware of that, okay? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay? Bear with me for just a second. And you were also interviewed by investigator Rundles, correct?
Yes,
And basically, you advised him that you didn't have any firsthand knowledge as to who had leaked the information to Felton Wood, is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay. And basically, you also told him that disclosure of information during executive sessions is not an illegal act, correct?
It was mentioned that there were discussions that information wasn't illegal to disclose as a criminal act.
Right.
However, information that is in executive session is to be held confidential and privileged and private, as information on any of the documents or any communication that we have from the city explicitly states that in email to confirm that.
Do you know of any state of Georgia code provisions that address that matter?
I do not know of any code
Do
that
you know-
specifically addresses confidential information other than what's in our charter.
Okay. And basically, is there any information, is there any charter provision that addresses confidential information during executive sessions?
It discusses confidential information regardless of the context of when it was given.
Okay. And what provision is that?
It's a combination of section 216, section 3. It says disclose confidential information concerning, I'll read the paragraph
fine.
for which that is a subcomponent of. I think that's necessary for anyone to understand. Section 216, prohibitions. A, no elected official, appointed officer, or employee of the city or any agency or political entity to which this charter applies shall knowingly, and it enumerates these things. 1, engage in any business or transaction or have a financial or other personal interest, direct or indirect, which is incompatible with the proper discharge of the official duties or which would tend to impair the independence of his or her judgment or action in the performance of official duties. Number 2, engage in or accept private employment or render services for private interests when such employment or service is incompatible with the proper discharge of official duties or would tend to impair the independence of his or her judgment or action in the performance of official duties. Number 3, and this is where it applies, disclose confidential information concerning the property, government, or affairs of the governmental body by which engaged without proper legal authorization or use such information to advance the financial or other private interest of himself or herself or others. And it goes on to discuss number 4, valuable gifts. Number 5, represent other private interests. Number 6, vote otherwise participate in negotiation or the making of any contract with any business or entity in which he or she has a financial interest. And then there's more subcomponents
Right.
of 2.16.
Right.
The second part that I made mention of is in section 2.17, where it does talk about the removal of officers, but then one of those options there is number 4, knowingly violating section 2.16 or any other express prohibition in this charter, which of course, knowingly violating section 2.16 is what I just read.
Okay. All right. And are you aware of any financial gain that Gene Bramlett may have received as a result of talking to the newspaper reporter on or about August the 2nd through August the 4th?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Are you aware of any other type of gain that he received?
No, I am not.
Okay. And did you sign a petition, okay, seeking removal of, or not removal, seeking a recall election of Gene Bramlett back in March of this year?
Yes, I did.
No further questions?
Mr. Bramlett's attorney mentioned something about an illegal act. Y'all aren't trying to lock up Mr. Bramlett, are you? You're here on a hearing to determine whether to remove him from office on the grounds alleged in the notice. Is that right?
Yes, that's
All
correct.
right. And Mr. Cornett, you heard me go through some examples with Mayor Thomas about executive session. I won't go through each of them again with you, but do you feel free when you leave an executive session to tell anyone you encounter what you discussed in executive session?
No.
Do you understand that you're to keep it confidential?
Yes.
Do you believe that everybody that you've served with on Lula City Council has that same understanding?
Yes, it is clearly stated in our charter.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing further.
Any more witnesses?
Yes. I'd like to call Garnet Smith, okay? Would you please raise your... Actually, Mr. Smith has such a fine voice that I don't even know if he needs that microphone.
I don't need it. We can get it here. Can you hear him now?
Absolutely. I could hear you just as well before, but I can hear you now, yes. Will you please raise your right hand, sir? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. And do you remember being interviewed by Investigator Rundles?
I do.
Okay. And you told Investigator Rundles that Felton Wood called you the night of the executive session.
That's true.
Okay.
Talking about 45 minutes.
All right. Do you remember about what time that call was placed?
Probably 8:30.
Okay. All right. And basically, Investigator Rundles, okay, asked to see your, first of all, call log on your phone, correct? Do you remember that?
I do.
And were you able to provide that call log for him?
I couldn't look it up, he couldn't look it up.
Okay. Or didn't he look it up? The first time that he interviewed you was on October 2nd, right?
Sounds right.
And he interviewed you again on October the 12th. And he actually looked at your call log, but it only went back to October the 5th, only a week. Do you remember that?
What'd you say again?
All right. Basically, according to Investigator Rundles, okay, you gave him your phone, and he actually went back and reviewed the call log, but the call log only went back for 7 days.
That's true.
Okay. Okay. Is that unusual, or you, like me, you don't know enough about cell phones to know one way or the other?
I know nothing.
Okay. And I'm not much in front of you, but, and isn't it true that after that, okay, he asked you if you could call your cell phone service provider to get the records?
I told him you could, I don't care.
Okay, and actually, didn't you tell him that you couldn't do that, but your wife, Linda, would do that?
She tried and she couldn't either.
She couldn't get it either, okay, all right. And who was your cell phone service carrier back then?
Verizon.
Okay, all right. And do you remember another city council meeting that happened on July the 17th? 1 week after the executive session that we were talking about.
Executive meeting?
Executive session, yes, okay, all right. And at that time, okay, you confronted the mayor, correct, okay, about leaking information to Felton Wood,
I did.
okay,
He dropped his head.
right? And did he say anything? Did he respond?
I couldn't understand him if he did.
Oh, okay, you couldn't understand him, all right. Okay, and didn't you tell him after that that basically it had to be either you or Gene Bramlett that leaked the information to Felton Wood?
It did, because I know I didn't.
Okay,
I never have. 9 years I've been on there.
all right. Are you aware that Felton Wood told Investigator Rundles that you did in fact go over to his house and leak that information to him?
I didn't leak no information to Felton Wood. He would have been the last gentleman I would have been leaking
Okay.
any information.
Okay,
No,
all right. And you never were over at his house in July of this year?
no.
Okay,
I went down there August 5th when the Smith lady shot herself, and he called me, wanted me to come down there and get him a cheaper cremation for her. Probably made 2 trips down there then. That's the only time.
okay. And do you have any firsthand knowledge that it was Gene Bramlett that disclosed that information to Felton Wood?
What's that?
Do you have any firsthand knowledge that it was Gene Bramlett that told Felton Wood about those 2 candidates and their names from the executive session of July the 10th? Is there any evidence of that?
I don't.
Okay,
But Gene Bramlett and the mayor the next day after that run into Felton Wood's house. They all have a family reunion down there and talk it over.
okay. So are you aware of what they talked over, if anything?
No,
that next
sir,
day?
I just see them go down there and they go out and eat together. I
Okay.
don't think they're talking about fruitcake or nothing.
Well, how do you know what they talk about?
I don't.
Okay,
I know they getting information from Summers. It's not coming from me.
okay. And there are other city council members that the information could have come from, as well as other individuals, correct?
I don't think so. I don't think neither one of them have done it.
All right. Well, that wasn't my question, though, okay? My question was, aren't there other city council members and other family members of city council members that might have leaked that information?
Could have been a family member. I'm not sure on that.
Okay. So it could have been other people. All right. All right. Now, do you remember another executive session that happened on August the 14th?
What was it about?
It was about removing Gene Bramlett as a city council member. It's my understanding.
Was that the meeting after he called the Times and
Yes, after the article came out, that's
the
correct.
article came out?
Right.
Yeah.
And do you remember that after you left that executive session, do you remember coming out and saying, okay, that I told you I was going to do this?
I never said that. That sounded like Felton Wood's comment. I never said that.
So if other people overheard you say that, they would be lying, correct? Other than Felton Wood.
I never said.
Okay, well, if other people say that they overheard you say that, then they would be lying,
That's
correct?
exactly right.
Okay. All right. And do you remember talking, you want me to hold up? How many trains come through here? The depot for real.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. Do you remember talking with a reporter from the Gainesville Times, okay, about 2 months ago about this situation?
No.
You don't remember talking to an article, and do you remember talking to him about the fact that the people of Lula need to get along better? Do you remember that?
Yes, they do need to get along better.
And didn't you make the comment that if we got rid of Gene Bramlett, then that would help things an awful lot, or something to that effect? Do you remember that?
Could have been something to that effect, I'm not sure.
Okay. All right.
Nothing, thank you.
Mayor. Call your next witness.
Nothing further. All right.
Any other witnesses?
No further witnesses.
I would like to make a closing, but I'll reserve it open.
All right.
Wait. Hang on. I thought you said you didn't want to testify.
Well, got one out there.
All right, now, we're not gonna sit there and let them point like that. Now, if we're gonna swear witnesses, we're gonna swear 'em.
Okay, you want to testify?
Yes.
All right. You want him to, where do
We're
you
gonna
want
need
him?
him, I don't know I can reach the mic over
Here,
here.
I'll come up there.
Take that one off.
Yeah, we can take that one Felton, right there, just out of the podium and bring it over here to the witness stand. Thank you. You'll need to swear.
Can you hear me?
You'll need to
Yes.
swear.
All right. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, please state.
Chair for me, Felton, right there. Thank you. Hold that mic.
Please state your name,
Felton C. Wood.
okay? And were you interviewed by investigator Rundles?
Yes.
Okay? And basically, tell me what you know about who first leaked confidential information to you after a July the 10th, 2023 executive session.
Garnet Smith.
Okay? And do you remember when that was?
Yes, he came to my house.
Wait, do you remember when it was?
It was.
Was it the same day of July the
Before
10th?
the meeting that they went in and turned around, he came out. I told you what I was gonna do.
Well, it was before that, but,
And then
wait a second.
it was the meeting where they went.
Wait a minute. What we're gonna do here is he's gonna ask you questions and you're gonna answer, all right?
Right.
So let's let Mr. Crawford ask you questions.
Okay.
Let him give you the answer.
And-
All right now, we don't need out of the audience. Thank you.
All right. Now, and was it shortly after the July the 10th executive session? When Garnet Smith and you talked, was it?
I don't know exactly the date.
All right. And what did Garnet Smith tell you?
Okay, he come over, he wanted to know where Gene.
When you say he came over there, where did he come over?
He come over to my house.
Okay.
My wife had to come in there and get me.
Okay, why did your wife, okay, all right, go ahead, and what did you do?
And, I said, what you want? And, she said that knucklehead's out there.
Okay, and what did you do then?
Got my clothes back on, went outside, and asked Garnet, what do you want?
Where was Garnet Smith at?
In his truck.
Okay.
On the left-hand driveway.
All right, go ahead, and who spoke first?
Garnet. I said,
Okay.
what you want? He said, where's Gene? I said, ain't my time to keep up with him. He said, I just got, things at his house, he's not there. I said,
Okay.
you don't like it anyway, so what you doing now?
Okay, all right. And then what was discussed, if anything, between the two of you?
Oh, I asked him again, you know, he's already came to the house a couple of times, plus I seen him at Gene's. We discussed about the city manager's helper, you know, assistant, as y'all call it.
Okay,
Okay, and he said, he states that he don't need one because that's too much money.
okay,
Okay, and it started out like $60,000-$70,000, and it went up, you know, kept going up. And then we got discussion and all, and that's when he closed.
did he talk about how many candidates there were?
Yeah, supposed to be 3. He said something about Chip's application got thrown away.
And Chip would be Chip Horst?
Of course.
It's
Is
all
there
right.
somebody?
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. We're gonna do this up here for the audience. We keep it down so they can ask the questions and we can hear the answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then, what did Garnet Smith say about whether or not they had narrowed the number of candidates down?
Well, turn around,
What did he say?
about Horace G, you know, and I asked him, you know.
Did he
said
mention
Horace G.
did he mention Horace G by name?
Yes.
Okay. All right, go ahead. What did he say about him?
He said, well, we don't need him. I said, well, who else you got? He said, a lady that Denise Shockley was trying to give a $10,000 more of money to get signed on.
You mean to accept the position?
Accept the position.
Okay,
And then I said, no. I said, you could get Horace because he's qualified and all that. And you don't have to pay him the extra $10,000.
okay. And what else was said?
And then that was about it right there.
Well, okay, did he mention this other candidate's first name? Or
Well, if you don't mind, just tell them if they made the name. I don't want to release that. her name.
Okay,
Yeah, he made the name. I ain't gonna
Okay.
release her name.
and did he say anything about what that woman, a female candidate, may have known or not known about subjects like wastewater
Oh,
management?
yeah, like drain, water and all.
What did he say?
I asked him, I said, what's the qualifications? And he said that, he didn't know nothing about wastewater drainage and all that.
And did he say where she was from?
No.
He didn't say anything about being from around Duluth, Georgia?
Yeah, it was Duluth where Tony was.
Okay, so he did say that, right?
Yes.
And did he say why they didn't want to hire Horace G?
Because they all went to school with him.
When you say they all went to school with him, what does
Most
that
of the
mean?
people around here went to school with him.
Okay. All right, now. All right. Were you present earlier this year at the Waffle House when
Yes.
you and Gene Bramlett and his wife and your wife and Joe Thomas and his wife were having dinner?
Yes.
Okay. And did Denise Shockley appear?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And what happened?
Turn around, we all got out of the truck. Boy and his wife and I was in the Waffle House and all that. I was running a little late. Came up, Denise was over there fussing with Gene, talking about he broke the law and stuff like that.
What do you remember about what she said?
She said that you broke the law, and then turned around there and he said, no, I did not break the law. I voted the people's way because the Historical Society, not the Historical Society, but the Planning Commission turned around and turned it down.
And describe her mood or her tone.
She was mad
Okay. And what made you say that she was mad?
because she didn't get away.
Okay. All right.
And then we went inside, and then I stood up. I said, let me tell you how you beat that. She said, no, I don't want to hear.
Okay. All right. All right. And Had you-
Plenty witnesses heard that.
there's plenty of witnesses that heard what?
Yeah, when she come in storming towards her husband, I told her and said, hey, I'll show you how you can beat that. We didn't want to hear it. And her husband also
Okay,
said
all
that.
right. But that wasn't addressed to Mr. Bramlett, right?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, were you also present at another executive session meeting that occurred in June of this year?
Yes, I believe that's when they went back and voted to
Oh.
redo the,
All right, what happened, and how did that occur? Did you know it was an executive session?
yeah, because, you know, they advertise it.
Well, okay,
You know, they advertise all the meetings and everything, goes into, you know, I call it closed door meeting.
okay. And did you go in at that time to the executive session?
No.
What was being held? You didn't go in?
Oh, wait a minute, you're talking about the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we ain't talking about city hall meeting, we're talking about where's the little meetings that y'all hold in between all y'all, what is the meetings called?
For clarity, a committee meeting?
Committee meeting.
All right.
Okay,
I
all
want to
right,
sit down in a committee meeting.
all right. And what were
And
they,
you need general public.
what were they
City.
discussing at that time?
City manager, assistant.
The assistant city manager position? Okay, and what were they saying about that?
Started off with talking about the city manager thing. And I said, hey, I want to know who's going to be our next city manager. Because that's a
Okay.
big deal. And then it said, you will be the first one to know.
Okay, all right.
And then Joe called me down and said, hey, you can't sit in there.
Okay, so the mayor called you down and said what?
I couldn't sit in that meeting because they were going to talk about personnel.
Okay, all right. Now, did Gene Bramlett ever divulge any confidential information to you about what happened at the July the 10th, 2023 executive session?
No.
Okay, you're sure about that? Okay, all right. And after that, okay, after Garnet Smith and you had the discussion, did you tell other people about what you and Garnet Smith had discussed? Did you discuss it with others?
Wife and Roy and
Okay. So you discussed it with a few people, or more than a few people, correct?
yeah.
Okay,
I mean, it's a big deal. I mean,
Okay.
city manager.
okay. All right.
It'd be nice to have you.
Do you know of any financial benefit that Gene Bramlett obtained or had as a result of talking with the newspaper reporter around August the 2nd or 3rd?
I don't know, I wasn't there, but he does need some help somewhere. I'm telling you, man.
Okay, but does that mean that you don't know of any? What does that say?
No, I don't know nothing.
Okay, all right. Do you know of any other type of gain or benefit that he derived as a result of that conversation, or any conversations about an assistant city manager position?
The only thing I know is the man tries his best to do what's right for the citizens. If they believe it or not.
All right, do you have anything to add, Mr. Wood?
Yeah,
What?
I got maybe some evidence here for each one of y'all for a complaint of leaking out information.
What, does it have anything to do with Mr. Bramlett and this? Okay, well
But it
then,
does this town.
okay. There's no need for that right now. You can do whatever you want to afterwards. Your witness, Mr. Hayes.
Mr. Wood, you recall being interviewed by Mike Rundles?
Yes,
All right. When you were interviewed, was Mr. Crawford there with you?
yes,
Mr. Crawford is your lawyer?
yes.
Okay. Have you seen the written report from Mr. Rundles that summarizes his interview of you?
Not yet.
Okay. It says in there, and tell me if you disagree with what he said. This is what he says happened in the interview. He says, investigator asked Wood if he felt he had leaked any privileged information to the public. He stated no. Investigator asked him why. Wood stated it shouldn't be privileged information because the city was getting ready to spend $60,000 for an assistant city manager when the city manager was not overworked. Do you remember stating that to Mr. Rundles?
Yes.
Okay.
Many times, and also the city council did too.
All right, that's it.
Okay, just a couple more. Do you remember when you spoke with Mr. Rundles?
Down there at the Gainesville.
Could it have been in October?
Yeah, that's my state.
October the 9th, does that sound familiar?
Yes.
And later on, okay, when you talked to Officer Rundles, and you mentioned a conversation that you, or the quotes that you and Mr. Bramlett had made to the newspaper reporter. Do you remember that?
Yes.
On August the 4th. Before August the 4th, okay, tell me about how many conversations you'd had about this assistant city manager position with others.
You talking about the city manager, and it's been going on over
Well,
6 months. Then
between July the 10th and then, about how many conversations had you had with others before you talked to the newspaper reporter on or about August the 2nd or the 3rd?
I talked to Gordon Smith about it.
What?
He talked to me about it.
Okay.
And then,
Did you overhear other people talking about it? Not your conversation with Garnet Smith, but about the issue in general.
no,
Okay. All right. And when you talked to the reporter, did the reporter seem to already have knowledge about what was going on with the assistant city manager position?
in a way he did.
Okay. In what way was
I
that?
wasn't there, I mean, you know, how you get information, I asked him, I got.
Okay, well, did he
I tried to
tell you what it was about? Okay, why he wanted to talk to you?
You wanna talk to me about, what I know about the, city manager stuff?
Okay, and did he appear to have information already about what that was?
Yeah.
The names of the candidates?
Mhm.
Okay. And what happened with that position?
What happened to it?
With the position, about who got it, who didn't get it, et cetera?
Well, they went back there and voted to, redo it again.
Okay, and when you say redo it, you mean reapply, the
Yeah,
candidates have to
redo the
reapply?
application
Okay.
and stuff.
Nothing further?
Nothing. Thank you. You can step down. Oh, that was the second right there. Yeah, if you'll put it back, hold it for me. Any other witnesses, sir?
Okay.
Wait. One additional witness, I guess.
Here,
Okay.
you don't have to do that.
Okay.
I need a break.
Well, I'll just hold it, I guess.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to call Tangi Garner to the stand very briefly.
Angie, I'll have to keep you minutes.
Would you please raise your right hand, ma'am? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Do you need a microphone or not?
No.
Okay. All right. And
Hey, mate, you take this one, get up in our room, Mr. Joe.
okay.
I'm good. I talk loud.
Not a problem. Do you recall being present during a July the 17th, 2023 executive session?
Yes.
Okay. And Garnet Smith, okay, asked Joe Thomas, the mayor, whether he had disclosed information to Felton Wood. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember whether or not, okay, the mayor answered him?
He said no.
Okay, all right. And when you talked to Investigator Rundles, okay, a few days later, you mentioned that the charter does not bar disclosure of executive session statements. Do you remember that?
That was discussed in executive session.
Okay. But you did make that statement to Investigator Rundles, right?
I repeated that statement that was stated in executive session. I did not say that.
Oh, okay. All right. But that was the substance of the statement, right?
Yes.
And who
What was
did,
the substance of the statement? What's the question?
basically, you told Investigator Rundles, okay, that the charter does not bar disclosure of executive session statements or information, right?
Again, I did not say that. It was told to me in executive session, and I just repeated
Yeah.
that to Mr. Rundles, yes.
And who told you that during executive
The
session?
city attorney, Joey.
Okay. And that there were no sanctions for it, right? For
Correct.
disclosure, and that there was no punishment imposed for it,
Correct.
okay? And do you have any firsthand knowledge as to who disclosed information during the July the 10th, 2023 executive session?
I do not.
No further questions at this
Nothing.
time. No further witnesses.
I'll close. Wait, argument.
You may proceed, Mr. Crawford.
Okay. Basically, Judge, as I've stated before, I would repeat my objection, okay, that Mr. Bramlett's due process rights have been violated because I do not believe that this is an impartial panel, and I don't believe that the City of Lula Charter provides for the imposition of an independent or impartial panel to adjudicate these type of sessions. And such a provision was expressly held unconstitutional in the case of the City of Ludowicki, and I may be mispronouncing that, versus Stapleton, 375 Southeastern 855. Can I approve?
Yeah, sure.
And it's equally clear that this panel is not impartial. Every member of this panel, okay, except Mr. Thomas, okay, voted to recall, okay, Gene Bramlett in an election recall that failed, okay, earlier this year. Plus, we've already heard about the other evidence, okay, of the bias, okay, and also the prejudgment, okay, of these members, okay, as was disclosed to Investigator Rundles. However, setting that aside for the moment, okay, what evidence did we hear here today or tonight that Gene Bramlett ever disclosed or any type of information to Felton Wood? Every member up here has said they had no personal knowledge, okay, no firsthand knowledge, okay, that Gene Bramlett disclosed it to anyone, okay? And so basically, there's a standard of proof that has to be met, the preponderance of the evidence. I didn't hear any evidence that Gene Bramlett did disclose that information to Felton Wood. Nobody said that they had any knowledge that he did. As far as the reporter, okay, he did not disclose any type of confidential information to the reporter because it was no longer confidential, okay? Garnett Smith himself, when he was interviewed, he admitted that he had disclosed, okay, certain information about the candidates, but that it wasn't confidential, okay, because it was already out there. But it was definitely out there before the August the 4th article and before the newspaper reporter was talked to on August the 2nd. Therefore, there's been no violation, okay, of either provision for malfeasance, okay, of any type of either section, either 2.17A1 or 2.17A4, okay? There's been no evidence of it, and this panel should make a decision based upon the evidence that was presented tonight and not any notions they already had about who disclosed that information. Thank you. I would ask that Mr. Bramlett not be removed.
I also want y'all to make determinations based on the evidence tonight. Mr. Crawford states that Mr. Bramlett did not discuss the information with Felton Wood, but Mr. Bramlett testified he did. So I don't understand how he comes to you and states that. We have the Times article that states plainly, this is the exhibit I produced tonight, Exhibit L, that the city was forced to abort its search for an assistant city manager in August after Councilman Gene Bramlett leaked privileged information from executive session and named Horace G., a director of public utilities in Banks County, as one of 2 candidates under consideration for the job. There's the charter clearly identifies disclosure of confidential information as part of the grounds for removal. And a lot of the defense amounts to them saying that somehow it ceased to be confidential information because it was public knowledge. However, Mr. Bramlett talks about going into a store and hearing people talking about it, but yet he can't say the names. You heard Mr. Crawford try to prompt Mr. Wood to state that between the July 10th executive session and the publication of the Times article that Mr. Bramlett heard discussions about this, but Mr. Wood did not take that bait, did not state that he had heard other conversations. So who determines when something that is clearly confidential, that's discussed in executive session, is no longer confidential? According to Mr. Crawford and Mr. Bramlett, I guess Mr. Bramlett gets to make that determination, and that is just simply absurd. If y'all were to accept that, then you could leave an executive session if somebody even kind of alluded to something that you had discussed in executive session. You would feel free to just empty out everything that was said, and that's not how it works. That's simply not how it works. He also sees in much of his questions on financial benefit, but that's not part of what the charge is in the charging document. It talks about using such information to advance the private interest of himself. I would encourage you to look at the first article in the Times, the one that prompted all this, and read what Mr. Bramlett said to the reporter. And if my wife was here, she'd make fun of me for taking off my glasses so I can't see up close. Here's what he said. Bramlett said also that a second candidate named Horace G., a director of public utilities in Banks County, was discarded as an applicant for reasons that to him seemed political. Council felt City Manager Dennis Bergen could not control G., according to Bramlett, who alleged the other council members wanted to hire the female candidate as someone Bergen could influence and manipulate. Council knew, and this is a quote, this is in quotes in the article, council knew Bergen could not blow smoke up G's butt, Bramlett said. He knows as much as Dennis knows. He's a good man. It'd be a good position for him to have in case something happened to Dennis, which eventually it will. Bramlett went on to state that Bergen, and this is in quotes, indicated G had the job, end quote, but that the female candidate was preferred by council because she could be, and this is in quotes, manipulated, end quote, by Bergen. Another quote, Bergen could blow smoke up her butt, Bramlett said. She had to be trained. Horace didn't have to be trained. Dennis could have manipulated her. Dennis wants people he can control. It makes him mad when you ask him a question. Asked whether Lula needs an assistant city manager, Bramlett said the people should ultimately decide whether the position is created or not instead of council. It's the citizens' money, he said. It's not council's money and it's not Dennis's money. And this is the key, I just feel there should be more transparency and the public should know instead of just getting blindsided. That's the same type quote you heard from Felton Wood in the Rundles interview, that he felt like this should be something that the public should know about. So Mr. Wood and Mr. Bramlett have decided to heck with confidential information in executive session. We're going to just put it out there because we believe it should be out there. That is a total abdication of his responsibility as a council member. So I think this clearly fits in both of the bases I put in the charging document. The final decision is up to you, but I do think it meets the requirements for removal.
Any other comment, council? As to the motion under due process, I'll note that the Lula City case that's referenced and that's provided specifically states that the charter therein does not provide even the rudiments of due process. It's clearly deficient because it makes no provision for notice, when in this case we have notice, and the hearing. We've just had a hearing before impeachment for a standard of proof, which is the preponderance of the evidence for any rights in order to mount a defense, such as the right to subpoena witnesses, and the right to subpoena witnesses is called for in the City of Lula charter regarding this process, and then finally for establishing an impartial panel to adjudicate the issues once an impeachment has been filed. That's a 1989 case, and the Pence case that I previously referenced indicated that a panel can serve in both functions, that is the investigatory function and the adjudication function. For those reasons, as well as others, I will deny the request that this panel be declared improper for rendering this decision. You're entitled to retire to executive session for deliberation if you so choose. And if you so choose, I'd recommend that the panel and I go to City Hall, and I would be there solely to advise on any legal issues that you may have. Your decision must be announced here in public.
I believe that we should.
All right. We now need that motion.
I'll make a motion that the panel move to executive session.
I'll say.
Motion made by Tony Cornett, second by Denise Allen. All in favor of going to executive session?
No.
All opposed, say no. We're in executive session. We're gonna go see all y'all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back in executive session, let's come back to order here. We left executive session about affirmation. So, you know, we just done it.
Okay.
We left the building, we came out of executive session.
Okay.
And the council has made a decision on that coming do this.
Yeah, I make a motion for the removal of Mr. Bramlett on the following grounds, as indicated in the charge documents. Item 1, incompetence, malfeasance, and misfeasance and malfeasance in office pursuant to section 2.17A1. And item number 2, pursuant to section 2.17A4, knowingly violating section 2.163 by disclosing confidential information concerning the government and affairs of the governmental body without proper legal authorization and using such information to advance the private interest of himself.
If I get a second,
I'll second that.
motion made by Tony Cornett, second by Denise Knox, to remove Jim Brown from office. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
I will announce that the order will draw it up, it'll be reduced to writing and submitted, will not be effective for 10 days pursuant to law, and there'll be a opportunity for an appeal for up to 30 days.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
Motion
second.
made by Carl Smith,
I'll
second by Tony Cornett, to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.